Hello, I'm Rafael, and I'm here to present our article exploring the role of action mechanics in game-based stress recovery. Everyone experiences stress at some point in time, and if not managed properly, it can have significant effects on our lives. Stress can be divided into short-term or acute stress, which is a natural response of our body, and long-term or chronic stress, which can be caused by a lack of adaptation or recovery. When it becomes chronic, stress may affect our health and well-being, with research pointing out its negative effects on our immune system, fertility, digestion, and mental health. To recover from it, authors have proposed different models. One of them is Mandryk and Fritz, who propose four main dimensions that can aid in stress recovery. They are psychological detachment, when you are physically and mentally away from the stressors; relaxation, when you are free from tension and anxiety; master experience, when you use skills to overcome problems and have a sense of personal growth; and lastly, control, being able to make your own decisions. Among the many ways to recover from stress, video games have already been recognized as a useful tool for stress recovery. However, most research focuses on casual and puzzle games, like Animal Crossing or Stardew Valley, which may not represent the most popular games played nowadays. When checking the top 10 most played games on Steam, we see that all of them have action mechanic elements. Those action mechanics can be defined as in-game situations where there is intense temporal processing, attentional split, the presence of visual clutter, complex motor response, or high perceptual and cognitive demands. Those mechanics are present in many distinct types of games and aren't exclusive to games labeled as action games, but are also found in shooters, fighting games, MOBAs, and even sport games. Now, here's the problem. If someone is playing one of those challenging and stressful games, is this person still recovering from any previous source of stress, or is gaming making things worse? This is precisely what our research investigates. Does action mechanics increase or reduce stress? And how does the recovery process occur? We evaluate this by examining the effects of action mechanics in self-report stress, subjective emotional experience, physiological experience, and specific recovery dimensions. To address this, we designed and conducted an experiment where participants were asked to complete a stress-inducing task before playing 15 minutes of our select game. The game select was Risk of Rank 2, an off-the-shelf survival shooter game that was molded to create 3 different conditions, each with varying levels of action mechanics. This video shows our first condition, combat required, where combat was inevitable. This is the closest experience to normal gameplay, with lots of enemies pursuing and attacking you as soon as they see you, making the combat frantic with high levels of action mechanics. In our second experimental condition, combat was optional. The same number of enemies would appear, but they would only engage in combat after being provoked. This allows users to have more control over the pace of the battles with fewer enemies and a sparser amount of action mechanics. The last condition, we had the same maps and items, but no enemies and therefore combat-free. Since the goal of the game is to navigate a new terrain and locate a teleport to escape the planet, navigation remains a challenge. However, without enemies, most of the action mechanics are not present. Now for our results. Answering our fourth research question. This plot illustrates the findings for the dimension recovery experience. Conditions are color-coded, with dark blue representing the combat required CR condition, light blue representing the combat optional CO condition, and purple representing the combat-free CF condition. The recovery experience questionnaire summarized their answers on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 indicating a high level of recovery in that specific condition, and 1 indicating a low level of recovery. In this plot, the orange line represents a neutral level of recovery. As we can see, all conditions scored higher than neutral for all dimensions, especially for psychological detachment, where we have a mean of 4.35 across groups, and for the dimension of control, where we have a mean of 3.8. Those results are in line with existing game literature. Video games are especially good at immersion and helping you forget about problems, making them a great source of psychological detachment. They also offer in-game freedom, boosting your sense of control over your choices. However, there has been only a small amount of research investigating this using games that have action mechanics. While we don't see a significant difference between conditions for detachment and control, this is not the case for the other two dimensions. We can see here that the combat-free version scores significantly higher than combat required for recovery through relaxation. On the other hand, games with action mechanics were particularly effective in fostering a sense of mastery. This means that instead of having a clear best type of game to decrease stress, all different levels of action mechanics have the potential to aid in stress recovery, but this recovery will occur through different pathways and with some trade-offs. It all depends on the source of your stress to determine which type of game would be the most effective in dealing with it. Our remaining research questions support those findings. While we couldn't observe any difference between our action mechanics conditions when analyzing self-reported stress, we observed that all participants reduced their score, returning to baseline values. The same was observed for some of our metrics of emotional experience, with pleasure and dominance increasing and returning to baseline independently of condition. Heart rate was also reduced for all conditions, as a physiological marker of stress, confirming our self-reported data. Please refer to the full article to see the figures. While heart rate was reduced for all conditions, it was the most pronounced for the CF condition. Together with a decreasing arousal and increasing the relaxation dimension, all our self-reported and physiological metrics indicates that the absence of action mechanics is the best to relax, while not having as much mastery. On the other hand, the conditions with more action mechanics had lower relaxation and a higher value for electrodermal activity. While this physiological marker would suggest increasing stress and arousal, the decreasing heart rate makes the interpretation less straightforward. Still, it has the best score for mastery and control, being great when competence is undermined. In conclusion, our research expands on earlier findings that video games can be beneficial for stress recovery, and also shows the potential of even those including action mechanics. We now have a more refined understanding of the potential for games to aid in recovery, and can offer specific recommendations based on individual circumstance, preference, and needs. So, next time you're feeling stressed due to a lack of competence after a bad presentation or a rough day at work, the solution might be playing some action games. Thank you for listening.